Hello, welcome to my channel, Make Believe History. This is my inaugural video. I'm going to keep this introduction short because I want to get into it. I love this man. Not because I believe in anything he stands for or any of the policies enacted. The guy's a fucking clown. But he was elected to do exactly what he is supposed to do. Be a clown. That's the whole purpose of leaders. Kings, queens, presidents, prime ministers, pharaohs, whatever you want to call them. They are supposed to entertain us. Let's begin.
Feudalism is a term that came into use in the 19th century to describe how society was structured during the High Middle Ages. That's between 1000 and 1300 AD.
First of all, right here I'm going to push back on every video I make. These dates shown here, but of course any date, no matter what number they are given, depending on the culture, are made up. There has never been a 1000 AD or a 1300 AD. Even the so-called present year in which we live is just a made-up number.
Earlier historians modelled a feudal system based on the exchange of land and services. Under this
Exactly. This was an exchange of land and services. But let's keep watching.
This feudal system, most land in the kingdom belonged to the king, and some to the church.
Wrong. Most land belonged to everybody who happened to live wherever they happened to live.
The king parcelled out large estates to great lords known as tenants-in-chief, in exchange for their military and political support. These great lords then parcelled out smaller portions of land to lesser lords on similar terms, who did the same to local lords, who did the same to peasants. The system is often represented as a pyramid with the king at the top.
Again wrong. The so-called peasants, the actual people who owned the land, parceled out pieces of land to the lesser lords, lords and king. This pyramid is upside down.
The feudal system had its own vocabulary. A king or lord who gave land to a lesser lord became the latter's overlord. The person receiving the land became the vassal of the person who granted it, and the land itself was called a fief. These relationships could even cross national borders. After the Norman conquest, it was not uncommon for lords to hold lands in England and France, owing allegiance to both kings. Even the King of England was a vassal of the King of France for the territories he had inherited there. Although this model reflects some fundamental truths about how medieval political culture worked, historians now think it is too simplistic to explain what was really going on.
Historians believe it is too simplistic because they have it all wrong and backwards.
For one thing, the pyramid implies that all ties of loyalty were vertical and that everyone was dependent on someone higher up in the pyramid. In fact, this wasn't always the case. Many feudal relationships were horizontal, among equals. For another, the kinds of services given in return for land could be very varied. For peasants, this was labour service or rent, while for landowners, it was more like an alliance. Vassals were expected to support their overlords politically and militarily. By the later Middle Ages, though, feudalism had largely disappeared from Europe. This was the result of a number of factors. Firstly, medieval kings grew less reliant on their great lords to provide soldiers for their armies, turning instead to professional paid soldiers. This process had already started in the 12th century, and by around 1300, kings no longer expected to assemble armies based on obligations to provide military service. This weakened the bonds of feudal political culture. Secondly, the Black Death, which arrived in England in 1348, significantly reduced the population available to work the land. Those who were lucky enough to survive the epidemic had increased bargaining power and could increasingly choose where they worked and demand higher wages. This meant that the nobility gradually lost their control over the lower and middling ranks in society. Finally, The growing economic importance of towns, which typically sat outside the feudal system with their own charters, and trade, also contributed to the decline of feudalism, gradually reducing the power of the nobility and leading to the growth of prosperous middling urban classes. So, to recap, the great lords were less frequently expected to provide military service to the king, the peasants were increasingly able to live and work where they wanted, and money replaced manpower as the key agent of economic and political power. Whilst feudalism declined in England from the 14th century onwards, it was not formally abolished until the 10 Years' Abolition Act of 1660. In other European countries, the end of feudalism came much later. France abolished feudalism after the 1789 revolution, and Russian peasants had to wait until 1861 to be made free.
Again, all these numbers are just made up. They have no basis in reality.
Amazingly, the last remaining traces of feudalism in the British Isles made it into the 21st century, until finally abolished by the Scottish Parliament in June 2000, with the Abolition of Feudal Tenure Act, which took effect in November 2004.
To recap, the pyramid is upside down. The peasants, as they are called, were actually the landowners. They were the ones that both worked the land and tended to the livestock to provide food. They were the ones who provided shelter for each other and clothed each other. They were the richest. They were also the ones who studied the natural environment. They were the scientists of their time. They were the scholars and educators. The rest of them, whether lesser lords, overlords, kings, whatever you want to call them, they were the stupid, lazy people of the time. They did not want to work the land or attend to the livestock. They did not want to take part in society. So what did the peasants do with them? They put them to work as entertainers. These people were the original actors, writers, showrunners, production assistants, wardrobe and prop masters, and everything else associated with performing for the entertainment of the peasants. Again, I use this word peasants just to identify who is actually in charge here, not the other way around. These other lazy, stupid, useless people did exactly what modern day stupid, useless, modern day actors, writers, showrunners do today, making television and movies. These people wrote and acted in the very same types of entertainment we like today: sitcoms, procedurals, soap operas, both daytime and primetime, and all the same types of movies we watch today in every genre. Problem is, just like we do today, instead of looking at these people for who they truly are, stupid and lazy, and the comedic entertainment that they were supposed to supply to the peasants in exchange for a taste of the food produced, they became idolized for the fame that they had obtained, especially the funniest ones, because the whole purpose was to entertain and make laugh. Instead, they took these plays, movies, and TV shows and believed the misinformation as truth. During the plague, while being entertained with half-wit stupid cures for the disease, they took it as truth. Sound familiar? And the stupid lazy people who were there to entertain suddenly became the ones who were looked up to for leadership. And it all went downhill from there. The exact same thing that has occurred today with the election of a clown to the president of the US. Historically speaking, aside from the people who supply food, clothing, and shelter to the group, a so-called leader, whatever name you want to give it, ruler, pharaoh, king, and on, they were and have always been the laziest, stupid people of the group, and their job was to entertain. And part of that entertainment was to be the butt of the joke. Always. Well, that's the end of my video. Far more to come. We're going to have fun with this because that's what history is supposed to be. Hilarious.